Okay. I do see that we have 9 attendees right now.
Oh, good. Excellent.
And I want to welcome everyone. We're going to take another minute or so before we launch, just so that we get as many people as possible before we get going. But we're not going to take too much of your time. So we're up to 23.
Oh, terrific. I can see Eric Stites has joined us.
Yeah.
And my business partner, Julie, is on the call, so I'll need to behave. Just for everyone's benefit, Evan and I were just having a moment then. We couldn't see anyone on the attendees, and we thought we'd mucked up the technology, but it's all working. That's fantastic. Yes. While we're just setting things up here, Evan, do you have any tips for people on which screen they should use or chat box if they want to communicate with us?
Sure. There's a button, if you move your mouse around, called chat. And when you're in the chat function, you can send us a message. You can send a message to everyone, and we will be following the chat throughout the session.
Yeah, I just put in a chat to Julie. She's given me a message, and Pete, hello Pete, has said, hey guys. So if you can see those messages on your chat box, you'll know you're in the right one. So if anyone else wants to pop something in, I think it's good practice.
It is indeed good practice, and I think we're going to get started. We had roughly 46 people sign up. And we have roughly 23 people on. And as I told you before, half the people that sign up typically participate. So let's get started. First of all, thank you to the New England Franchise Association. Thank you for participating. The New England Franchise Association is committed to improving the knowledge and expertise of franchising for both franchisors and franchisees and industry suppliers. Today we have an important topic, which is the power of mission, vision, and values. For me, it's a deeply personal topic, as you will see. I am Evan Hackle. I am your host. I am the president of Engage Consulting and Total Training. With us from Australia, who got up super early, by the way, to be with us, is my good friend and franchise relations expert, Greg Nathan. Greg?
Hello. Thank you. You want me to say a little bit about myself?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. Look, so I'm a psychologist, and I'm obsessed with understanding the people side of franchising. I was a franchisee and a franchisor executive, like many people on the call. I did that for 10 years, and I basically ended up in a state of confusion about what is the role of the franchisee and the franchisor. There were no resources around. This is in the early 1980s, late 70s. And so I started the Franchise Relationships Institute to develop those tools and resources that I never had. And that's what still drives me today. And so when we get to talk about purpose and mission and vision, these things still resonate deeply with me. Thanks, Evan.
So we're going to start off with a little poll, and I'm going to launch the poll right now. And there are 3 questions to ask. And what we're trying to understand from the group is, do you guys have written mission and vision statements? And, yeah, I know I have one. Yes, maybe, no. And then does everyone in your organization understand it? And, does your franchise system live to your values? So if you could go now and enter the results or enter your information, we can kind of get a sense. While we're doing this, I just want to tell you that one of the things that I've noticed in my consulting work is I interview employees, I interview franchisees, I interview senior management, and generally the first question I ask is, what is the vision of the organization? And generally I get, I don't know. And that is a big statement, because if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to get there. And that having that guiding post, and we'll talk more about that. I do, though, every now and then run into organizations where there is tremendous clarity. And there's a big difference. And you can tell an organization where everyone is really focused.
What
So,
do you see, Evan, when, like in terms of behaviors and so on, when the organization has the focus?
well, they're all prioritizing the right things. They're talking in the same language. You see better, I call them brand stewards, people that understand the importance of the brand, because if they understand what the organization's about, the mission, and they understand the vision of where it's going, and they understand the values, it's easy for you to be in support of the brand. And it goes also to not just the franchisee, but to their staff and to their employees. So we got our beginning results here, and we'll start here with the first question. Most people have them, but only 2 people actually have them and know what they are. So I refer to those as marketing, mission and vision and values. These are things you put on your website. They look cool and, oh, I like that. Maybe you roll them out when you're selling a franchise, but you're not living them and breathing them. And that's really what we're here to talk about, is living and breathing the values. And how does that make a difference? Does everyone understand? We've got 1 person, yes, got a little sometimes. And does your system live them? So here's the interesting thing. Every franchise system has culture, and the mission, vision, and values are sort of the foundation of culture. Either you define your culture and define your direction, or the system creates your culture and your direction. And remember, culture eats strategy for lunch. What was the guy's name? Drucker said that. And it's true. And the key to a good mission and vision is to have the ability to really define clarity of what the organization is going to do. So I'm going to end the poll. And
Evan, could I just comment on something you just said, which resonates with me?
Please.
If you're not leading and setting direction as the leadership team, the organization will start to do it for you. And in a franchise network in particular, there's going to be strong personalities and people who other people look to because they've got credibility. And so I think you can lose control very quickly by the informal power structures in the network if you're not leading properly. And I think the power in what we're talking about today is giving people more control around their culture. So thanks for that. That was a little insight I just had.
Yeah, no, and I think it's very powerful.
And so, can I just make a comment, Evan? Pete Philbrick has asked if we're recording this.
It is being recorded. Thank you. And when this is done, you will receive I think a link to the recording. If it's not immediate, it will be shortly thereafter. And we encourage you to share it with anybody. One thing about the New England Franchise Association is they said, I said, should we just share it to people in New England? And then, no, anybody in the world, we're here to promote franchising. And the New England Franchise Association is an FBN and part of the IFA. And by the way, there are a lot of people from Australia that are friends of Greg that are part of this and getting up early, and we appreciate them. And please do share.
And I'm not sure if people picked up on the irony of what just happened, but Evan just said the New England Franchise Association exists to promote franchising, and mission.
Yes.
So you did it without even thinking about it, which is a nice statement about the culture of that particular organization.
Yeah. So I want to just, share a little bit just so people can kind of understand. I went and got my MBA, and I learned about the importance of a business plan and mission and vision and things of that nature. And I came back into my family business, and my family business had been stalled. It was a $3 million business for 6 years in a row. And I said, Dad, I got my MBA. We need to have a clear mission, vision. We need to have a business plan. Got together the company, got together the employees, and we put together very clear vision of where we wanted to go, very clear mission. We shared with everyone. And this is the important thing is if you have a mission, vision, and values, you share it, right? What's the point of keeping it a secret? So we shared it with everybody. And our goal was in 5 years to go from 3 million to 10 million. And we went from 3 million to 5 million to 10 million to 25 million. So we grew incredibly fast. And then I went to work for a company called CCA Global Partners, which is a franchisor and system. And we grew compounded for 20 years at 29% growth. And I just think about that. We went from a very small company to $10 billion in system-wide sales between all of our different franchise systems and co-op models. And we did it because of the clarity of vision and the clarity of mission and sharing that. And in those organizations, in my business and at CCA, companies I work with, you know, there's training for every employee. Every new employee is absolutely trained on what the mission vision is, where the organization is going. Things are brought to life. They're talked about constantly. And I want to take a moment here and kind of share with you that example within my own businesses. So for me personally, I am an engagement person, and I have, for my consulting business, the mission that we're engagement champs, that we are promoting engagement, write tons of articles on engagement, wrote a book on engagement. But our mission is to be known as a thought leader on engagement. And so we're doing everything we can to do that. Our values are exactly the same values as our sister company, Tortal, because a company doesn't have different values. But one part of the company can have a different mission and vision than another. So if you're in a franchise organization where you have multiple brands, each brand would have its own mission and its own vision based on the business that it is. But the values of the organization, generally speaking, stay exactly the same. So in the case of Tortal, we are training champions, and this is the mission. The mission is who you are. This is who you are at the core of your organization. The vision is where you go. And in the case of Tortal, we're going to change how the world conducts training. And this is in part because we are huge believers in innovation. So if we're really going to believe in innovation, it makes sense that we are going to change how people train and how people do things. And we do this every day. And we want someday for the world, our BHAG, for the world to sit back and say, Tortal training changed how people train. And that is on us because we were able to create that, because we said so, because we focused on it. So if you look at this document, the mission is who we are, the vision is where we're going. And I like to say that's like planting a flag. So it's the direction we're heading. And this is why it's so important, is when people know where you're going, it's so easy to get there because everybody is focused on the same thing. Everybody in the organization understands it. So part of that is then translating this every year into your business plan. What are we going to do? And challenging your business plan, and we do this in our company, is we get together and every initiative goes against, hey, does it meet our values? Does it meet our mission? Does it move us towards our vision? And we take this very seriously, but we do a couple other things. But let me just make this point here, because you see a big white gap there. And that is a statement that we call a purpose statement. Purpose statement is a why. It's who you are. Why do you exist? And ours is we make effective training easy. So
is that why it's next to the tortoise there? Because the tortoise is just effortlessly floating and swimming?
Yeah, the tortoise is actually designed to look like it's in water and moving beautifully and wonderfully. Cordell Riley, who you know is the one that branded it, and it is Tortal, by the way, is Portal with a T for training, which is kind of cool. And their branding person said you need to have a mascot, so we have a turtle, which is. But we have.
Does he have a name?
You know,
or just call him Cordell.
We like to call Cordell Tordell for.
Right. Can I just add something to what you were just explaining? I see so often, as you do, we work with hundreds of different organizations, so you do learn a lot from what people do well and also what people don't do well. It's easy to get distracted and the organization starts heading off in a different direction. And I think your point earlier was that the mission and the vision keep you focused on the direction. It doesn't tell you how you're going to get there. That's the business plan, but it certainly keeps you heading in the right direction. So there's a lot of talk at the moment about the moon landing 50 years ago. and everyone's celebrating this, but isn't that an amazing example of we're going to the moon, we stay focused on that, and they didn't end up missing it, and they didn't end up going to Mars at that point.
Yeah, it's funny, I didn't think of it, an Australian did, but you know, that's planting the flag. This is what we're going to do by the end of the decade. This is what we're going to do.
And they did.
So at Tortle, we took the time to really think these things through, and let me tell you something, we really wordsmithed. I mean, I spent a lot of time with the entire team doing it. When a new person gets brought on the team, I personally meet with them and share this and talk about the whys and why it's so important. It's generally an hour to 2 hour meeting. I review our business plan. I review our financial statements. I go through every single thing. When I was a franchisor, I would bring on new employees, and we would show them our franchise discovery documents. We'd show them our financial statement. We'd show them how our franchisees made money. We would talk through our mission, our vision, and it was a very core part of who we are. And then we created tools in franchising where we had online training classes, videos, and things like that, so that every employee would understand. And if you want to have people that are great brand stewards, and people say, well, people are off brand, off this, off that, a lot of times it comes down to not clarity of vision, because when people buy into the vision, then they are very supportive. The next thing that we do, and this is, I think, very different and I'm very proud of, is every month we have a company meeting and a different person in the company shares the company mission, vision, and values. And I have here, if I can get this done right, a little video. This is actually edited down from about 15 minutes to 3 to show you how we in our company talk about mission, vision, and values. And it's a different person every month.
What I want to focus on is really our values and how we are living and breathing those values. And as I look down through those, collaboration, some of the words that stick out to me that really resonate as of late are strong teams and jump in with both feet, because I can honestly say that every single person on the team since the start of 2019 has really had to step it up individually, collectively, and everybody jump in with both feet. As far as openness is concerned, the words that stuck out to me in this particular area were try new things and new ideas. And once again, we are working across projects. We are peer reviewing each other. We are jumping in where need be. As far as innovation is concerned, the words that stuck out to me were committed to continuous improvement and think outside the box. And we have been once again collaborating across the board. We're thinking outside of the box. Some examples of that are Mike and I are working with the learning strategy team, talking about helping to refine SOWs, and working with leadership team and LS team to put some costs around what it costs for us to create training. Accountability. We actually, right now, as far as accountability is concerned, we are working within project timelines. We're all doing internal reviews, and then with results, the words that stick out to me are start with the end in mind. And something that resonates right now with me is we're really pushing for making sure that our goals, and we can position ourselves to be able to reach that 200,000 goal that everybody keeps hearing about. And so another thing that I think is just really powerful that shows that we're all living and breathing our mission, vision, and values is the fact that everybody keeps throwing the term around, I walk at Tortle. You see it in emails, You see it in responses to people when, things go great, maybe not so much great, but everybody is just really throwing out the term, I rocket at Twirl and living and breathing it. So that is my mission, vision, and values. So it's all back to you, Cordell.
So as I desperately look to find my mouse so I can click out of this, I just want to point out a couple things. You missed a ton of interaction where other employees are talking, where she's challenging people to share and things of that nature. If you're a new employee in the company, you are at the second monthly meeting, you are presenting this to the entire company. And we do that because we want people to take it seriously. And if they know that they are going to be presenting the mission, vision, and values, they know that they really have to take it seriously and pay attention because they're about to deliver them. So the next slide here.
Evan, just before you proceed, I've got a couple of questions, and there's a couple of questions coming through also. That was your team meeting together in a virtual environment, obviously.
Yes. We're virtual.
Yeah, so all those, because I was wondering, were they the participants on this call that we were looking at, or were they?
No. Those are our staff people, and so we have about 18 different employees, and it's
right.
Virtual. We meet monthly via Zoom because we have employees all over the place. Okay,
and we've got a couple of comments have come in. Julie was just complimenting you on the way you laid that out. She's saying she really likes the way you've defined the purpose and the mission and so on. This is in, if anyone's wondering, this is in the chat box. And also Sam has asked, she's saying they've got a lot of change going on and they're about to go through this process of building mission, vision and so on. And she wants to know how they don't get lost in committee. Everybody's having a say and she might have like 20 people. So they arrive at a result.
Yeah.
Do you have a?
So first off, I'm really glad you brought it up because I might have forgot the point, and the point's really important. If you're doing this for a franchise system, you have to involve the entire system. And the biggest mistake people have is management goes into a room, they hire a facilitator. 3 hours later, they come out with some nice statements and the staff hasn't been involved, the franchisees haven't been involved, and consequently there isn't the buy-in and support. The first time I did this on a major scale was with a franchise organization called Flooring America. The organization had gone bankrupt. We had bought them out of bankruptcy. So we went around the country and we literally did 14 different regional meetings, with the primary purpose of the regional meetings was to focus on our mission, our vision, where we wanted to be, and understand where everyone's coming from. There are going to be a lot of opinions. That's the key to professional facilitation and having someone take responsibility for that in the organization. In some organizations, you have training staff and people that are very capable of doing it. Sometimes you need to outsource it. The one thing I would say is that it's generally better that the CEO of the company isn't the person facilitating the meetings because they should be listening in the meetings. Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody in your training department who's a really good facilitator, that can work really well. But it's really important. And so what we did is we did all these meetings, and then we worked with the advisory council to firm up the plan and get input. And then we had a very small group of people that worked on the wordsmithing to get that right. Then we shared again with the advisory council, and then we went out and at that time we brought everyone in and we had a national convention, and then we presented the plan to everybody with a booklet that they could use and with tools for them to share the plan with their staff and their people to get everyone in alignment. And what was interesting is our big fear when we had bought this bankrupt franchise system is that part of the bankruptcy ruling is every franchisee at the end of 1 year could leave. They couldn't use our name, but they could stay in the business. So imagine at the end of the year, everyone could leave, no longer owe you any money, stay in the business. All they got to do is change their name.
We'd call that movie Nightmare on Franchise Street.
Yeah. And by the way, the name wasn't all that good. It's a good name today, But at that time, there were 400 company-owned stores that had bankruptcy sales and going out of business sales. So the franchisees, there were 202 franchisees in 300 some odd locations. Of the 202, we lost 2. And those 2 just never attended anything.
And are you saying that the process you went through, where you were consulting, listening, coming back to people and involving them, was a major factor in them staying with the group?
A total factor in staying with the group.
Okay, well, it's pretty profound.
The group united around the process. They felt heard. They felt inspired by what it was that we were looking to achieve. And in 4 years, when I managed the group, it went from 700 million in system-wide sales to 2 billion. And granted, we added locations, and because people were inspired by the power of our vision and what we were doing. But the biggest thing that really made me feel good is that our members grew at 2 and 3 and 4 times the industry rate because they were implementing the plan. So
can I summarize then what you just said and
please
add something? Yeah. So there's 2 things going on there. The first thing is the process you follow to get to your mission, vision, and values. You had a leader. It wasn't done. The leadership wasn't a committee. So somebody was pushing forward and driving it, and you had a very specific process, I guess, with time frames. We're going to do this, then we're going to have this meeting. So it's moving forward and you don't get stuck and distracted. That's an important point. And the other thing, sorry?
We did one other step I didn't mention. We actually surveyed every employee of every franchisee. So we didn't have live meetings with them, but anybody that worked in the franchise system participated in a survey to give us information to help us produce the plan. And that
takes a lot of work. So there's got to be commitment from the leadership team to invest the time and the resources to do that. And in your case, you had a huge payoff. But the other thing that's implied in what you're saying, the question comes up, how do we get commitment all the time from franchisors? How do we get the franchisees to engage and commit to doing things? And the key is often involve them. And when people are involved in a process, their commitment level goes up to take action. And what you did by involving people in meetings and listening to them is they started to feel an ownership of that. And that's very powerful. But you never lost control of the process.
Right. And that's why my company's called Engage Consulting, the I for involvement. And that's why I got so personally inspired, because I saw the impact. When you involve people, you inspire people, people work together, and that friction goes away and moves into more positive energy, which is cool. We have time issues and you have great stuff. So we're not done. I've just got one last comment that I'm going to turn over to you. When we hire someone, we talk about the vision, but we also talk about their job and how they help achieve it. And it's really important for a person to connect that whatever they do has an impact in achieving that vision. So this is the beginning of our performance evaluation. We actually give the performance evaluation at the beginning of their hiring, not as a surprise at the end of the year. And the reason for doing that is when people know how they're going to be judged, it's easier to have clarity of what to do. Now, we have actually since given this up, and we have moved to monthly ongoing evaluations where we do talk about these things, but the same exact concept applies. I just didn't have as good a graphic. So Greg, before I move over to you, I just want to ask, I am still sharing my screen, correct?
You are. We're seeing the performance evaluation.
Perfect. So Greg is going to really share a lot about how he does this in his company, but really the whole concept of mission, vision, and values for franchising. Greg?
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge Julie Turia, my business partner, who's on the call, and she's actually popping some little questions in the chat box as well from time to time. We have a 2-page business plan. It's a Word document, nothing fancy. And this is just part of page 1 of that Word document. It's got a whole lot of stuff on it. It really defines, who are we? Why do we exist? What do we want to do? It's got goals and stuff, and it's got measures in it, and what are we going to focus on? But you'll notice on the left-hand side, in a very important position, that down that column, it says mission, which we also talk about our purpose, our vision, which is our big, hairy, audacious goal, and then our values, which define our culture. So Evan, if you could just click again and we'll blow that one up, because that's what I want to focus on. Thank you. And I don't want to just talk about my business, because that's not what we're here today. I want to talk about the principles behind this, and then we're going to transition and talk about how we can relate this stuff to the franchising sector more broadly and how it impacts on everybody in the call. But our mission up there, which is also our purpose, is why the business exists. And in our case, it's fostering, which is all about encouraging the creation of profitable partnerships. And profitable partnerships is where franchisors and franchisees are making money and enjoying their work and achieving what they want to achieve. And we've got in the global franchising sector there deliberately to define we are a global organisation, even though we're based in Australia. And I want my team to constantly be thinking in terms of our global impact. So that's very much the why we exist and why I started the company.
Greg, before you go on, I want to point out something that's important. Notice that Greg uses the word our purpose with mission, and I used who we are. You know what? There are a lot of different ways and a lot of different people define these things differently. It doesn't matter. What matters is you define things, whether or not you use exactly the same terminology. I mean, there's so many books, so many different ways of doing it. It's doing it, and it's not, and not getting hung up on, what terms I use versus what terms somebody else uses, because it all works.
And you'll know when you've really got a good mission statement. It actually starts to generate energy when you do what your mission is. So yesterday I was at a conference. We had 100 franchisees in a room together, and we just completed a franchisee satisfaction survey with that company. The results were actually quite terrible, and the CEO was new to the company, and he had the intelligence and the guts to show, we showed the franchisees the results of the survey, and he talked about what he was going to do to move the needle and improve the areas of concern for the franchisees. So we've got this collaboration going on between franchisee and franchisor in the room. And then we did a process similar to some of the stuff you do, Evan, where the franchisees got the opportunity to ask questions of the CEO. The CEO had the opportunity to think before he responded to those questions. They were workshopping, and I was just beaming, like the smile on my face was here to here, and my energy was great, because I thought we are living our mission at the moment, the purpose of this business. And every time we do that, it builds energy in the business. Now, in terms of the vision, where we're going, we in our case, we want to be recognized as the place people go to if they're in the Antarctic, in Africa, in America, England, or Tasmania, and they wanted to improve their franchise relationships, they would come to us. And so that's our definition. It's a big goal that we're striving towards, to be the go-to people. And again, we're building ways of people getting access to our materials. We're building materials. We're making sure those materials are going to be attractive and relevant and helpful to people. So that's our mission and our vision.
Could you talk a little bit about the shortness of them and the fact that they're not a paragraph long? We spent, I think, about 2 hours at one stage, Julie, I, and the chair of our advisory board, refining that mission and vision statement. And we continue to refine and shorten, because interestingly, one of the things that we're great believers in is simplifying things down. So I think the shorter, the better. But it shouldn't be a cliche though either. Yeah, and I think the shorter, the easier for people to understand, the easier for people to remember, because the paragraph's a lot harder to remember than a sentence. So yeah. I think you've done a great job with it.
Thank you. Now, when it comes to the values, these are the things that I want everybody, Julie and I want everybody in the company to embrace in terms of their attitudes and their behaviours. And the way I got this from Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, as a way to arrive at this. He talks about mission to Mars. If you were to send a mission to another planet, and you were going to say, who are you going to put on that rocket ship who's representing planet Earth or your company? You want them to embody everything you stand for to give a good impression. So I thought about who are the people I've been running this business for 30 years. And over that time, we've had about 5-star people in this business who I'm just so proud of what they did and how they went about their work. So I thought a lot about what was it that made those people similar. And so you'll see in the blue box there, they've been developed from the qualities of our top people. And there were definitely certain traits, characteristics and behaviours that just kept coming up about how they went about their work. And one of them was this servant heart. These people were all extremely generous and really loved connecting with other people. So we embodied that as a value. We call it bring a servant heart to your work. Another thing is these people were all really smart, and whenever they would make a decision, it would be a good decision because they had thought it through. So again, that value, practice good judgment, think things through, consider all the angles is extremely important because we are a research and thinking business, and I don't want people making dumb decisions because they haven't thought about it. The realness and the honesty there, be real. It's extremely important to me that genuineness and authenticity is practiced daily in terms of how we do things. We have a reputation for that. And so whenever I bring people on my team, the first thing I say to them is, if you ever make a mistake, you just need to own it and fess up. You're not going to get into trouble, and always tell the truth. And that's kind of who we are, and that's helped us build the business. So there's a little bit of a flavour there of some things that are important to us. If people are not practicing those values, Julie and I just get really upset. I've used the word gutted there, but you'll know if you've got a good set of values, if the leadership team in particular gets angry or really disappointed when people aren't practicing those values, and other team members also will raise it and say, this is not who we are. And like you, Evan, we discuss this all the time. And in fact, my team, I think they roll their eyes sometimes, oh, here he goes again. But I think the test of good leadership is you've got to keep talking about values constantly. It never stops. And that's the role of the leader, is to, the technical term is to enculturate your team in this belief system about what you stand for. So that's a little bit about...
As the leader, you have to embody.
You do.
You have to live the values. And if you don't, people are going to catch you, which is good.
And they not only will they catch you out, but they catch your attitudes. So if you roll your eyes when a difficult customer is on the call, or after a meeting with a difficult client or a difficult franchisee, if you go back into your office around the boardroom and say, oh, that idiot I was just dealing with, that idiot franchisee, what you've just taught your whole team is you totally disrespect franchisees in this organization. So just a slip of the tongue, a facial expression can undo all that good work about the values you're trying to build.
Yeah, I had a situation with franchisor where they were not being very transparent about a very major issue. And I said to him, don't you think you need to be transparent? You value integrity. And the guy just straight face says, yeah, I value integrity, not transparency. And, which, yeah, really, I mean, transparency is part of integrity. And when people see you do that, then your employees feel like they don't have to share everything they do wrong. And, it's just a slippery slope.
I have a question that I want to put to everybody on the call, and I'd like people to put into the chat box the response to this question. So if you could just listen carefully, everyone, you might want to just jot this down. But I want you to think about, as franchising people, what is an important behaviour or attitude that enables you to be an excellent franchisor? So I'll just repeat that. I want you to think about what's an important behavior or attitude that enables you to be an excellent franchisor, something that you practice in how you go about your job in franchising. And I'd like people to pop whatever just jumped into their head, just one thing, into the chat box, please. So thank you, John. So John jumped in quickly saying being optimistic. We've got having integrity, being available to people. I love it. Sam has said being open-minded. So that's that preparedness to shift in the face of evidence. Transparency, Kathy said having empathy. Tristan saying being a good listener. Julie is also saying listening to what franchisees are saying, which is not always easy. Ben has talked about having compassion and empathy. Kat has talked about showing genuine care for other people. Now, what's coming out of the group? What about for you, Evan? What's important to you as someone who's in the franchising sector in terms of how you go about things?
What's important to me is being authentic. That okay. I am who I am. That I am reachable. I'm not pretentious. That I am in the core, the caring, loving person who wants to support and help everyone be successful.
Mm. And can I just say that you do practice that, and for people on the call, Evan is not very good at words and writing. He often gets his words mixed up. And the first thing you said to me when we met is, by the way, Greg, I'm dyslexic. And so you'll need to forgive if I send an email, it doesn't make 100% sense. I might get my words mixed up. That honesty and that authenticity, as you said, your credibility went up hugely in my mind, whereas often as consultants we feel we've got to portray this impression that aren't I awesome and fantastic and intelligent, and you are very intelligent, but in other ways you're an amazing thinker. But so I just thought I'd throw that in as an example of practicing values. Now, look, thank you everyone for that, because I want to transition this conversation to talk about us as practitioners in the franchising sector. And Evan, if we could just move the slide on, please. In Australia, the Australian franchising sector has gone through a trauma in the last 2 years, and I think we're kind of moving towards into a better place. But there's been some franchisors, large franchisors, who clearly did the wrong thing by their franchisees, and they got caught out by the media, unfortunately. And there was some big stories in the media about franchisees being exploited, and it actually damaged the brand of franchising. And there's been a lot of work done and a lot of soul searching about who are we when we're involved in franchisees. Are we a bunch of rip-off merchants? And I've been deeply hurt by some of the media coverage, because I am a great believer in the goodness and the value of franchising as a power to actually make the world a better place. I believe small business is the engine room of economic prosperity. And as we all know, we're all small business people in franchising mostly. So this has caused me to go back and think very deeply about who are we as franchisors and franchisees and franchise practitioners. And this topic, Evan, thank you. It was a gift, because when you said would I be involved in this, I started to frame my thinking up in terms of mission, vision and values. So what I'd like to share is my thoughts at the moment about a mission statement for all of us, if you like. This is just Greg's view. So if we could just click. And I believe the mission of franchising, why people buy a franchise as a franchisee, why companies go into franchising and say we're going to franchise rather than run company-owned outlets, is that we believe we can deliver a competitive advantage to ourselves and all the stakeholders by collaborating together. And the thing that excites me when we see collaboration occurring, and I can tell you as a psychologist, collaboration is a deeply human trait that we are driven to collaborate and share because it's how we evolve as a species. And when people are doing collaboration well, it actually creates a competitive edge. And you see it all the time. Yesterday, in that example with the franchisees, we ran a workshop where they were sharing ideas on how they could sell more coffee. And they came up with 10 breakthrough ideas on how they could maintain their margin and their price, give the customer a great experience, make more money, sell more coffee, and it all came from the group. And that's an example. And if that company is able to put into place 2 of those ideas across the board, their sales will go up probably 3 or 4 percentage points, which is huge. So that's an example of kind of coming back to why are we in franchising and why would someone buy a franchise rather than go out and do it on their own? So I wanted to put a question to everybody on the call. If we could just throw to the next slide, please. And if you could click again. I'd like you to think about what's an example in the way you are working with your franchisees or perhaps your clients where you have actively collaborated on something, it doesn't matter what it is, and it's helped to achieve a competitive advantage. So collaboration is sharing knowledge and resources. So if people could just pop in an example where they have collaborated or seen collaboration and it's resulted in some sort of a competitive edge. So John has said setting up a new franchise advisory council, which is an example of tapping into the minds of franchisees. We've got here sitting down and talking with franchisees about their goals and having people share their wins, and that shares motivation, and then other people get excited. So that's a sharing of encouragement. Brett has said they run performance groups. Thank you, Brett. And performance groups are a great example where franchisees sit together, they share their goals, they hold each other accountable, and it raises the performance of all the franchisees in that group through joint accountability. So performance groups are an excellent example of collaboration to achieve competitive edge. So thanks for those examples. Now, so that's an example of applying mission to franchising broadly, and it may actually give people on the call an idea on when they're revisiting their own mission as a franchisor. Could we go to the next slide, which is about vision? And if we talk about what is the goal of being a franchisor or a franchisee or someone like Evan and I who are vendors to the sector. And my suggestion here, Evan, if we could put the next slide up, is that our vision is that all stakeholders are anyone who's got a stake in the system. So in a typical franchise system, it's your suppliers, franchisor and franchisee, that they are able to achieve sustainable success. And I just love that because so many franchise systems survive on selling franchises upfront, that upfront fee. It's not sustainable. You've got to survive on your royalty revenue. And a franchisee can only be sustainable if they're profitable. So if we come back to, if all our franchisees are profitable and are not stressed, and also you can't burn out because you can be making money, but if you don't have the energy to run your business, you can't sustain like running a business is like a marathon. And if all your suppliers are making money also from being involved, you've got this 3-way win-win. So sustainable success for all stakeholders. And I think it's a great filter to put through decisions. So a question I've got for the group, again, if we could push the next slide, please, is what's something that your network is doing that's helping your franchisees or your vendors or yourselves to achieve sustainable success? And Evan, I might even ask you, do you have an example where you've seen a franchisor do something that's clearly going to help them achieve sustainable success?
Well, a lot of them were things said before, but financial benchmarking to really understand the economics of the franchisee. Is the franchisee really making money? And what can you do, and how can you help coach people into being more successful? I certainly see, with online training, online universities, providing the tools for the franchisee to work with their team to make sure that people really are able to execute at that high level. And I've seen certain organizations literally create committees that are all about improving franchisee profitability and talking about that. And of course, the core, you have to have a system that's viable and profitable, because if you don't, you can talk all you want, train all you want, benchmark all you want. It's not going to do.
So the business model has to work and be pressure tested.
Right. And if it doesn't work, you need to figure out how to fix it, and quickly, because you got a lot of people invested in you.
And that's where the listening that people talked about earlier comes in, because if the franchisees are saying this isn't working, or this training program is not engaging our staff, and the franchisor says, yeah, but we've spent all this money and doesn't want to hear, they're not going to be able to achieve that sustainable success.
And one of the important things is when you look at businesses tend to fail because they don't adapt, right? Amazon comes into the world, the internet comes into the world, you have to change. If you don't have a culture where everyone can talk and work together, it's hard to get a franchise system to change. So one of the negatives of a franchise system is that there tends to be resistance to change because of the economic impact, and how do you get that shared belief? And one of the best practices I've seen is to literally create a committee of innovation. And this committee is made up of franchisees and staff that get ideas from other franchisees, other staff, and they get pilot stores to test new ideas and make sure they work, because testing with the entire system is not a very good model. But there are people that are willing that want to be those innovators, that volunteer to participate, and then you test and then roll out great ideas.
And then this is a tip for everyone on the call. This is brilliant, because people talk about, we've got an FAC, it's this broad kind of amorphous thing. But if you start a committee for innovation, and again, it's got a clear mission, probably it should have a mission and a vision and some values around how we're going to work together as a committee, that can be a very focused force for good. And I can see in the feed there, people have put up there, like making sure our sales are growing, because again, if your sales aren't growing but your costs are growing, you're going to get margin compression and your business is not sustainable. So thank you, Ben, for that comment. Boards of advisors and what you've been talking about, different types of advisory boards and so on, as an example of that. Now, I want to move the conversation on now to values, because again, in Australia, some of the problems have been brought about through not applying good values that serve the interests of all stakeholders. And I was running these past my wife the other night, and I said, there's 10 of them. And she said, do not call them the 10 commandments, whatever you do. So I'm just saying, here's 10 values that I think if franchisors and franchisees embraced, I think we would have a flourishing franchising sector globally. So, Evan, the first one applies to the franchisees. And I believe we need to educate and encourage franchisees to really own their business, and reminding them constantly, this is your business. You've got to look after your customers. You've got to look after your employees. You've got to look after your profit. Care for that. This is you own this. We can't own this as the franchisor. The second one around supporting brand initiatives, you've got to trust us that we think through what we roll out, and we need you to get behind that and support that. And the third one is to participate constructively, come to meetings, read newsletters. If Total rolls out a portal on training, we need you to log in and use it. So they're the three things for the franchisee.
If I could just comment, one of the biggest things I see missing in franchising is a clear understanding of the expectation of the franchisee.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've seen very successfully done is not management coming back and saying, hey, you got to attend meetings, you've got to do this and that, but to actually have the franchisees create a definition of the behaviors of a good franchisee, and let the franchisees define it. Because people that don't communicate, that don't go to national meetings, that don't go listen to webinars, don't read emails, they suck down the whole system. And it really starts when building the culture of accountability at the very beginning when you sell the franchise and letting people know what's expected of them. But when the franchisees put together that list of accountability, it really resonates. If management puts it together, it doesn't resonate quite
so
as
what you're saying, and this is a tip for everybody on the call, if you have a value, you've got to ask people, what does this mean in practice? So if we say we want franchisees to participate constructively, we've got to have the conversation to say, what does that mean on a daily and weekly and monthly basis, and align those expectations. So let's move across to the franchisor values, if you like. And I do believe, and this came out earlier when we asked people, what helps you to be effective as a franchisor? Caring for franchisee success was mentioned frequently. You've got to really care for their profitability and for their health. And I think these days, mental health is coming up as a huge issue. Technology, I think, is playing with people's heads at the moment. With people are getting obsessed and addicted, and just the pace of change is also having its toll on people. So we've got to look after the profitability of our franchisees, but also their well-being. Consulting on big decisions, it is unreasonable and stupidity to roll out a big change program without getting feedback and involvement. And Evan, you've spoken about this previously. So I think it needs to be a core value of a franchisor, and acting fairly and respectfully all the time with our franchisees. In Australia, there's a debate going on at the moment whether acting in good faith should be legislated as part of our franchising laws in Australia. So there are three values I would recommend franchisors start to think about, and what does this mean in practice? And then there's an overlapping part of this where the franchisee and the franchisor have to take joint responsibility and accountability. And what I've got there is the four. Everybody needs to care for the reputation, brand is reputation, and make sure nobody is doing anything that could damage our reputation. The second one is everybody needs to have this spirit of sharing and being open with data and communication. And you can't have franchisees saying, I'm not going to share my financials with you, that's my business. I think we've got examples of our clients where every franchisee sees the profitability of every other franchisee in the group, and that openness drives performance. Contributing actively.
We have a chat.
Yeah.
Julianne, who I know, who is an expert in culture, by the way, says values must be operationalized. They become part of the fabric of the business. And I think that's an excellent part because they become living and breathing. They become easy because they're part of what you do every day.
And that's where we've got to constantly ask the question, what does this mean in practice? That's what operationalize means. So thank you, Julianne. The contribute to the community is the power of franchising comes from franchisees getting involved in their local communities. So they've got a global or a national brand, but a local presence. And I think franchisors need to embrace this idea of being involved also in their community. So Evan, you're an example. You are involved in the community of franchising by giving back through the New England Franchise Association. And the last one, which is what one of the people on the call was mentioning earlier about hold strong opinions loosely, listen to feedback and be prepared to change your opinion based on data. So my belief is that if franchisors and franchisees would talk about these values more and operationalize them, we would have a healthy, thriving global franchising sector. And I wanted to put a question to everyone on the call. If, like I've just sort of discussed these briefly, but if there was one of these values that really resonates with you, I'd be interested to know what that number is, if you could put it into the chat box, and why. So which value resonates with you, just the number of the value, and why do you feel that that's a really cool thing for people to focus on and talk about?
While they're doing this, Greg, I'm just going to answer orally.
Yeah, thank you.
For me, it's hold strong opinions loosely. I think that generally people listen defensively, and that causes them not to hear. So I like to use the term listen for the kernel of truth. Listen for why the person talking to you may be right, not why they're wrong. I think we tend to listen for why someone's wrong, not why they're right. And if you can shift your way of being so that you're listening for why someone is right, it is amazing what things you discover, what you learn that can contribute. And I try to apply that when I was running franchise systems, when I was talking to a franchisee, was not to run to, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, just follow the system. It was, I want to hear more. Tell me why. So I think number 7 is really important.
And I'd just like, thank you, Evan, for that. I'd like to just keep encouraging people. I can see a whole lot of people on that call. Pop in the number of the value in the feed there. So Ben and Kristen have jumped in and they've both said number 8. Just by the way, Evan, that idea of hold strong opinions loosely, there's been a lot of research recently about what drives high performance, and having they call it a feedback culture, where people are seeking feedback on tell me what I'm doing well, and also tell me how I can improve. And those 2 questions, they're constructive questions, are a very powerful way to get feedback in a non-defensive way. What am I doing well, and how can I improve? So we've got Sam has put in caring for the brand and taking responsibility for making sure the reputation is protected. So that's all I wanted to say, Evan. So I'm going to hand back to you to see, does anyone have any questions, or how would you like to wrap this up?
We're going to definitely open up for Q&A. There is a Q&A function, which I think I am now opening. And if you want to go in and ask a question, you can, and we would be delighted to answer it. While people are doing that, I just want to say on behalf of the New England Franchise Association, we appreciate you participating in our webinar series. This is the 2nd one of this year, and we are working on putting together another one, which is actually on culture, which kind of is the next step, with actually Julianne Sullivan, who is paying attention, helping us in the facilitation of that workshop. And also the New England Franchise Association's website is nefranchising.org. We have a live meeting coming up in September. I know a lot of people here are not necessarily local, but if you can go to that website and check that out. And certainly we encourage people to become members. Okay, I do not see questions. I'm not 100% sure how this question thing works. So if you want to put a question in the chat, you can. And both Greg and I are very accessible people. So, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, we now have a question. Any advice on creating a mission, vision, and values that would work in a global franchise? Any best practices on localization? Do you want to start, Greg, as you are the international man of the hour?
Yeah, well, look, language does differ between regions and countries. So I think it's better to have the spirit of particularly the mission and the vision preserved. I can't see why that should necessarily be localized. The values, the language used would probably need to be tweaked a little bit. So I would not be flexible on the mission and the vision. I think they are very big goals as a brand, global brand, but the values, how we're going to adapt that locally should definitely have a local flavor, and using the techniques you talked about, sitting down with people and getting their input.
I totally agree. I operate franchise in 5 different countries. The mission and vision didn't change. Sometimes the language changed slightly, but one thing that does change is the tactics. And each country and their culture of countries are different. So, and the stage of development is different. So in some countries, the brands can be much better known, much bigger. In some countries, it's more, you're a big company in one country, but you're emerging in another. So the things that you do to move to that vision could be different by country. But you can certainly do global listening and involve people in listening. And then Eric, ask any tips for Zors to easily engage franchisees and build franchise involvement. I'll pick on something, Eric, you like, which is, I think one of the greatest and easiest things is to ask them and to survey them. And both Greg does surveying work primarily in Australia. Eric does surveying work here in the U.S. But if you ask people and listen, and Greg, I love the story you shared where the franchisor actually shared the results of the survey. I think there's nothing more important than doing that, because the assumption would be made that they are horrible if they're not shared. And so, sharing even bad results is better than not sharing them. And if you share them with integrity and you address them, it's a positive.
Credibility goes up. And the stupidity of franchisors who say, we don't want to share the results because we don't want them to know, they know.
Yeah.
They all know that they're unhappy. So it's by not saying it is just, I can't understand why you would not want to name it.
I worked with another idea I'll share, and I talked about earlier, which are, town hall meetings. I work with a franchise system with 3,000 franchises. And we started out with a big survey, and it's important because that gave us a foundation. And then I said, let's go out and let's now do town hall meetings. Let's get that connection. Let's understand what people have. And part of it was to work on a mission and vision. And they were like, oh no, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. What do we do? What if someone says something in the meeting we don't like, blah, blah, blah. Eventually we agreed and we did 6. Today, they are now, by the way, after building their mission and vision, and this is the most important thing, they are the key to powering growth. That's absolutely the key. They are the key. And so today they're at like 4,600 locations, and they do 100 town hall meetings a year. They don't have the same people at every town hall meeting. They move the staff. The staff. No one's going to 100 meetings, but they divide the staff up. They have people regionally responsible, but they have that kind of connection. And when you have they have a national convention too, where they bring thousands and thousands of people. But when you have that big a connection, it's hard to have that personal connection. And town hall meetings of 40 and 50 people really enable people to have that personal connection, that personal involvement. And
Evan, could I make a comment on town hall meetings? Just because this is a hobby horse of mine. I am not a fan of town hall meetings if there is a lot of unhappiness in a group. I am a fan of open communication, but if you get a group of people, this is mob psychology stuff. You've got a few really unhappy people in a group, they can turn a group nasty, and what will happen is the franchisor gets mauled out the front by people standing up and yelling and carrying on. But the way to manage that is to have round tables in the room. So if you've got 50 franchisees in a room, you would have, say, 8 tables, and there would be a franchisee leading each table, and they have been briefed on asking the people on their table, what are your concerns and what suggestions do you have on how we can resolve this? Or you put powerful questions to the group. What are you pleased about and why? And what would you like to know? And if those ideas are collected in small groups, and then each table facilitator stands up and shares back to the franchise or team out the front, our table had this issue, we note it on a flip chart, and we say, okay, let's move on to the next table. You get a list of issues, and then you can systematically work through them. People really love that because it gives them a safe way to contribute to the meeting and you get results. But just having the franchisors out the front saying, does anyone have anything to say, is an invitation to get mauled and attacked. And then the franchisors say, oh, we don't want to do that again.
Yeah. I will tell you that many a time I've gone into what we call the den. Particularly when people are very frustrated or upset. And I took over the responsibility for a system where their entire senior management had all quit and said the brand concept was a failure. Now, okay, everyone's there. Okay, the management doesn't even believe in this. What do we do? And by the way, they're thriving today, and they're 4 times bigger than they were. At that time, management called them a failure. One of the biggest problems in meetings is that no one likes to disagree. So if one person goes first and they say something negative, no one else wants to argue with them because that's impolite. So I developed a concept I call the balance beam. So I take the wall, and on the wall, I put a line. And on one end, I put utopia. And on one end, I put police state. On the other end, I put anarchy. And in the middle, I put utopia. So I'll take an issue like brand standards. And I'll say to the room, I want you to think about how we handle brand standards in the organization. And there'll be a lot of people maybe that want to do a lot of stuff there on themselves, want to break all that. And I say, okay, now pick the line, look at the line and put a Post-it note where you think on that line you feel we are. Are we too much a police state? Are we too much anarchy? Or is it just right? Or whereabouts? And I say, look, pick that spot. When I say go put it up on the wall. And then you see the diversion of opinions on a very important topic. And I have seen people that have been adamantly upset, about things go, I had no idea so many people disagreed, because people in the room wouldn't be willing to do that. And this balanced discussion is a really neat tool to have that kind of conversation.
So these are techniques to give people a safe way to express themselves. And that's why it's good to have a facilitator when things are a little difficult.
Yeah. And as you know, good facilitation makes all the difference in the world.
Good. Anyway, I reckon we should wrap it, Evan, because it's now 10 past. What do you think?
I think so too. And I want to again thank everyone. And Greg, I want to thank you for getting up early. I want to thank you for the 4 prep meetings that we had before. I want to thank you personally for the improvement in my presentation from your ideas. I really appreciate that, and certainly appreciate the people that attend and encourage people to share this.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for taking the time and participating and contributing, and thank you, Evan.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.